Hey students, welcome to Social Studies D Block. This is lesson 2. And before you ask, yes, all of this information today will be on the assessment. So I'm going to go through all of this information. It probably will take about 15 to 20 minutes. So that means class will be definitely shortened for today. But since you have that extra time, what I would recommend is that you go back over your notes and look over your notes for the types of governments that we studied in class. So you should have 6, and then look at the 3 economic systems. Also look at your concepts that we have gone over in class: rights, responsibility, government, power, and inequality. All right, so let's get into levels and organization of government. Your success criteria. So by the end of class, how do you know that you are done? If you can describe all the 3 different branches of the government and the 3 different levels and understand what they each do, you're good to go. All right, here we go. Remember to pay attention because at the end of class, there will be a quiz. Yes, that's right. Pay attention. So here we go. Let's start with a quick preview. Okay, when you're watching CNN 10 or reading a book, what part of the government do you often hear about or see? So I bet you hear a lot about presidents. I mean, we all know who President Trump is or President Biden now. Okay, we hear about, or prime ministers, we hear about different prime ministers. Nowadays, what do we hear about governments? Vaccines, COVID death, unemployment. These types of things are what is normally on the headlines of every newspaper that involve government. But the question is this the only part of government that there is? And the answer is no. Those are the parts that we normally hear about when we say government. So let's think about, how about you personally? I know you haven't been outside lately, but have you personally ever come in contact with the government? And every year I ask that question, students are like, no, well, yes, I've met the ambassador to this country, or my dad took me and we met this person, or mom took me and we met this person. So we normally say that, but we don't often think of the smaller parts of the government that are at work all the time. So for example, have you ever been to a police checkpoint where maybe they are checking to see paperwork that you have, or checking to see if you have a mask on or whatever? That is government. Have your parents ever been pulled over by the police? I know I have. Okay, that is government. Have you ever seen a firefighter or a soldier? That is the government. I know all of you, including me right now, the reason why I am missing class today is because I am at the immigration office. That is the government. Have you been to a public library or a national museum or a national park? Those are all sponsored, paid for by taxpayers' money, by the government. So this is the government at work every single day. We come in contact with it quite often, more often than we really think that we do. All right, so it's more than just the news, it's something that we come in contact. But we're going to be studying today those parts that we may not know as well, but some of the ones that we do know quite well. So you're going to be taking notes about the levels of government. You have a sheet like this. I don't know what page it is in your notebook at this point in time, but go into your digital notebook and open up your notes for week 3, lesson 2. So it should look like this. So by the end of this lesson, you should have these boxes all filled in. So I'm just going to go over these, and so that you're listening and you can pause. I'll even tell you when to pause and write it down. What are the 3 possible levels of government? 1, 2, 3. You might want to write down a little bit more information, maybe, if you can, about those 3. What are the 3 possible goals of the government? What are the 3 possible branches of a democratic government? And the answers are right here, actually: legislative, executive, and judicial. Then you have to tell me a little bit about each branch. Again, these are all on the assessment next week. So I would highly recommend you studying these. So by the end of class, you should have all of these numbers filled in. So let's jump on into it. Okay, our governments are normally democratic governments, like the Philippines, is organized into different levels. Just like you play a video game, you go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, or whatever level it may be. There are different levels, but there are also different branches of the government. So you may be on a level, and there may be different ways of going. All right, so we're going to first start with the different levels. So 1, 2, 3 levels also applies to school. You go through levels in school. Grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, those are considered levels. Another word for levels are steps or layers. Okay, so we're going to be looking at steps, layers, and levels. Here are your 3. So you might want to pause the video right here and write these down. You have the top. The top is going to be your national or federal level. That is the country level. Those are the people that control the entire nation. Then you break it down. Normally, countries are broken down into smaller parts. Like here in the Philippines, we're broken up into provinces. In the US, we know them as states. Okay, so they're broken up into smaller parts. So that would be the second level. That's going to be state or provincial governments. Okay, then it gets even smaller into what we call city, local. Here in the Philippines, we've studied barangay. There could be town. There could be village. They're smaller than the state. So again, you start at the top, the huge nation. Inside that nation is going to be state, and inside the state is going to be the city or local. Let's look at some examples. So, okay, we're not going to watch the one on Canada, but you could even just YouTube this or Google this one, the levels of government in Canada. I'm going to skip this one. You can watch that on your own if you want. It's pretty good, actually, goes through the layers. Okay. In India, there are various levels. They call them on the largest level, which is going to be the state government. The state government is the government for individual states, is called the. They can make laws and on local law enforcement. So that is going to be that state level that we talked about. So let me go back 2 slides. That's going to be this middle level, not a national level, not this brown one, which would be more of your national level. That's going to be called your union government. That's a whole country. Okay, so it's union, then state, and then this green one is going to be the local. Okay, and then the individual is the bright orange in the middle. Okay, so those are layers. Again, layers of government, levels of government. Again, in China, you might have a central government up top. Okay, that's the population of everybody. Then it breaks it down into provinces and regions or municipalities. So breaking down even smaller here. So you can see those here, here, and here. Okay, ooh, that was terrible. Okay. And then it breaks it down even further down. Again, we have county, city level, towns, townships, and communities down here at the bottom. All right, so let's look at the next one. If you read Hunger Games, they broke it down into districts. They have 12 districts. Again, you can talk about that would be probably more like a state level. Again, some other words you might recognize: barangay, district, territory, region, township, or province. All right. So those are the 3 levels you need to know. Each level has a certain amount of power. Who do you think has the most power? Hopefully, you would say the largest of the governments, which is going to be the national. And who is going to have the least amount? And that's going to be the smallest, which is going to be the local level or city level. All right. So those are our 3 parts of the government. What do you think the responsibility at each level is? Now, this you do definitely need to know for the assessment that's coming up. Like, what would a national government, the country's government, be responsible for? and what would a state level and what would a local level be responsible for. All right, so let's look at that here in a moment. So talking about the goals, we're going to come back to their responsibility. What is the goal of a government? Three possible goals. You might know the phrase SOS. SOS stands for Save Our Ship. Okay, SOS means help. Help. The government is there to help. How do they help? Okay, they do through safety and security. They do it through order, okay, keeping order in society, and they do it through various services. And we're going to talk about what they mean. So you might want to pause here and write those down: safety, security, order, and services. So pause and write. Now, here we go. How do each of these parts of the government relate to SOS? So let's look at it. So the national or federal government, what do? Hopefully you know by now the military is a national thing. They go and they fight in wars. If you're reading about the U.S. right now, they're trying to pull their troops. President Biden is trying to take their troops back out of Afghanistan. That is national level. Sometimes you hear about military conflict between North and South Korea, between Chinese military boats and maybe Philippine military boats in the South China Sea. Those are national issues. Diplomacy between presidents, national. Immigration is going to be national. And again, money. Okay, each state doesn't print their own money. The person who prints the money, or the part of the government that prints the money, is a national government. So you do need to know that for the assessment. What does the state do? The state is in charge of education. Can be. It's also in charge of like national resource, or state resources that are part of that area, and roads and some highways. And down at the local government, what are they responsible for? The garbage pickup, things like that, libraries, and parks. Police officers are normally in a local government. You have some state police, and then you have up at top, you have the military, but you also have the FBI and the CIA in the U.S. In the Philippines, I call it NBI, I believe, National Police. NPI, I believe. I'll have to look into that again, get back to you. All right, safety, again, is about police, military, firefighters, and borders. That is national. Order means traffic signs, courts. You got to be able to go to court. There are laws that are arranged and enforced. And last but not least, again, our services, public schools, libraries, things like that. All right, let's get down to our last part. So you should have most of your notes filled out. Now, actually, only two parts, the first two parts filled out. Branches of the government. Now, it's broken up into branches. Branches are where they kind of split off on each level. So each level has their own branches. All right, so don't get confused. Let's look at these possible branches. The three possible branches, write those down, are legislative, executive, and judicial. Okay, hopefully you see a keyword in here, or you can pull a word out of judicial, the word judge. Okay, they are the judges of the land. Executive, maybe you've heard of executive, okay, like CEO, Chief Executive Officer. Executive is normally the top person, and legislative is a word that we're going to jump into right now. Now, you may often hear about a word called the Constitution, which we've already talked about. That's normally above all of these branches. Okay? Normally, there's like a Constitution over. The Constitution gives power to each part, and then each part should be able to check and balance the other parts of the government. Now, what does the legislative branch do? They are Congress, Senate, House of Representatives, and they make laws. and I'll talk more about that in a moment. Executive branch carries out the laws. Okay, that's going to be a president, vice president, and their advisors called the cabinet. And then the judicial branch or the courts, and they evaluate, is that law match up with the Constitution? Is what they're saying and doing match up with the Constitution? All right, so again, let's jump into this. You could write this down. What does the legislative branch do? That's Congress or Parliament. That's who it is. Here are some pictures of what that might look like. Okay, groups of people. They are elected in by the citizens of the country. They are supposed to represent the people. Sometimes they represent big business because big businesses are giving them money to support them. But we would hope that they are represented by the people of their state. Their job is to create laws, as I said before, and they determine how tax money should be spent. All right, this is big, big, big. So in the US, they're talking about trillions of dollars being spent on these stimulus bills. That has to be approved by these groups of people. Okay, money being spent must be approved by them. The president does not just say, I want a bunch of money. He cannot do that, or she cannot do that. It must be the responsibility of these groups. And the executive branch, this is the most popular. Normally they're the leader of the country, the prime minister, okay, of whatever country it may be, the president of whatever country it may be. Sometimes it's the monarch or the king or queen of a country. They are the executive branch. They are elected in, except the monarch, obviously. They are elected into their office. They sign approved laws. So if a law is made, it goes to this person and they have to sign off on it. Or they say, no, I don't want that law. And they veto it. They say no. Their job is to enforce the laws on a national level or international level also. This includes military, borders, as we know Trump wants to build a wall, or wanted to build a wall. That includes borders. Military, Joe Biden is taking the military out of Afghanistan. That is an executive order. Okay, quarantine, as we're seeing here in the Philippines. President Duterte is saying this is what's going to happen, and this is what is happening. GCQ, MEGCQ, all of these different acronyms are put in place by the president of the Philippines, President Duterte. And last but not least is the judicial branch. Again, you're looking at judges here, judges. They oversee courts, they evaluate and assess the laws, and they use the Constitution. They have to know all the laws. They're lawyers. Sometimes they were judges in smaller courts, and they become judges in a national level in Supreme Court. Okay, some of the issues that they've addressed in these courts are like racism and discrimination. Okay, is the law backing up what people are doing? Drug laws, like currently in the U.S., they're talking about legalizing marijuana in certain states. That goes to courts. Religion, are you allowed to pray in school? Okay, that would go to a court. Gender, a big one is like gender bathrooms in schools. Should we have gender neutral type things? Same-sex marriage, that goes to courts, for courts to decide if it's constitutional or not. All right, so this is just an example of putting it all together. You have levels, national, state, and local. Then you have your three branches at each level. So each level has its own. So you may have a Supreme Court, state court, and then you have a local or city court. This would be like a traffic ticket. You go here. Here you're looking at more of a state issue, like maybe a school issue, educational issue, the way things are run in schools, and then you're looking at a national level up here. Okay? Now, what would it look like with dictators or theocracy? Is They have all the power. Okay, and there's no arguing. There's only one branch, and that is the head of the government. All right. In closing, hopefully you got all the notes for today. In closing, you're going to take a quiz at the bottom. Okay. You will get your grade right away to see how well you know this information. It is a Google form. I don't remember how many questions. I want to say 10 questions, so it's not long. Once you're done with that, you're done with class for today. You can retake that quiz, and that is great practice for next week. All right, great job today, class. Hopefully you can name the 3 levels of the government, name possible goals, name the branches, and tell me what the branches can do. All right, I'll see you all tomorrow.